Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Matthew. Thanks as always for having us. And thank you to all the participants. Now, you're going to hear something a little different than what you're used to start us off. I don't even need your camera on. I just need to make sure that you're listening. So if you need to cook, wash, wrestle with your children, do whatever it is that you need to do right now, do that, but listen at the same time. But before you leave me and you leave that keyboard, because I know you're probably on your phone watching in a little tiny window like this, please let me know if you can hear me okay. Just give me a thumbs up, a yes, I can hear you, or speak louder, or whatever it is that you need to say. All right, so that's a good sign. You can hear me. So welcome to Improving Communication with Our Teens. Today, I will give you all the answers that you need so that you never have problems with your teenagers again. Okay, now that I sounded like a teenager and just lied to you in your face, let me actually let you know that today we'll give you some tips that hopefully will help you out and that help us reconsider some things that we do at times that we don't even realize. So, for instance, let me start off with this. And it just happened like half an hour ago, and she's not yet my teenager. She's still my toddler, but it's a good preview into the future years. So, my daughter was running, Xiomara, and she hit herself because she fell towards the doorway. What do we tend to do a lot of the times when that happens? Don't cry. It's okay. She's in pain. Like, what are you thinking? Don't cry. But then on top of it, what do we like to do sometimes? And I'm not saying everyone, so don't get offended if it's not you. But we think, you know what? This is the perfect time to tell you again. How many times have I told you not to run? Do you think Xiomara cares to hear either of those things at that time? Don't cry as she's trying to gather herself. And when you say don't cry, it just turns into one of those like it's still going to be a cry. But then how much do I honestly think that if I say, how many times have I told you not to run, or this is why I tell you not to run? Which teenager, let alone toddler, says, you know what, you have a very valid point. I should probably listen to you more and not do that anymore. That's a very good point. I'm going to take that into consideration next time. It doesn't happen. It really doesn't. So, that being said, and that being our setup for today, one, know that some of these tips that I share aren't necessarily universal and for everybody. You have to take into consideration culture barriers, language barriers, communication, family composition. There's a lot of different factors, okay? But these tips can become beneficial if we try to put them into practice. And I'll preface all this by saying the following. I can tell you why the majority of diets don't work in this country, because nobody follows them to a T. It's a 30-day cleanse or a 30-day challenge or a 30-day, workout, routine that they gave you. And we're on day 6. You're like, I look the same. I see no changes. This is a horrible workout routine. This is a horrible diet. Well, no, because you just started. It's going to take time. You know as well as I know, anywhere between 28 days up to 62 days is what it takes to create a habit. And we have to understand that for a lot of us, not just our teens, we need to start breaking some habits. How we talk, when we talk, how we listen, do we listen, our patience. Some of the points that I'm going to give you today. So please take these things into consideration because they will play a factor for today, okay? Now, I'm going to make it simple for you. I'm going to give you 5 tips today. 5, hopefully, somewhat simple tips. And the first one you're probably reading and saying, Ernesto doesn't know how to spell. He wrote technoference. And let me correct you when I say I do know how to spell, and I'm going to make you aware of what technoference is. Big clue, it has to do with one of these things, your cellular devices. Beware of technoference, and I'm going to explain what it is. Listen more. I have the fortune of having my mom with me right now. And I asked her before I came in, Mama, because that's what I call my mom, Mama, if you had to give a tip to parents on how they can improve as parents with their teens, to support their teens, to encourage their teens, What would you say? She didn't even blink. We need to listen more, mijo. And again, for those of you that don't speak Spanish and you're listening, mijo means sexy, attractive, male, bald-headed individual, okay? But if you do speak Spanish, then it just means son to you too, okay? But I said, that's funny. That's my second tip, Mama. Listen more. She's like, yeah, we definitely need to work on that. And not just when they're young, not just when they're teens, but even when they're older. Number 3, make the time. Now, a lot of these seem so simple, but we tend to complicate them. Make the time. Yeah, I know I need to make the time. If we're prioritizing work, our tasks, and social media over our children and giving these things more time, our work, our social media, our own screen time, our own technoference, if you will, what are we telling our children? Okay, so making the time. Stop problem solving. I know that sounds odd for some of us, but how did you learn how to be a pretty good worker? Did your mom and dad tell you there when you were at the job? No, you got to do it this way. No, this is how we should do it. No, this is the way it's always been done in our family. No, you learned by doing things on your own. Okay. So stop problem solving and be patient. Here's the best way that I can explain this one to you. And if you need to, if you have a watch, go ahead and turn on your watch and look at your heartbeat. Do not let your child make your heart rate start speeding and just pounding and you feel it because you're so upset, you're so irritated. We have to try to control ourselves. So be patient, okay? So I'm going to go over each one of these, so don't worry, we'll give you a little bit for each one. Technoference. Let me explain what it is first. Technoference means this, and I'm going to make the simple example. You're playing with your child, you're sitting with your child, you're eating with your child, teenagers. We don't need to match them with us grabbing our phone while they're on their phone and pretending we're talking to one another. Can it happen on occasions? Sure. How frustrated do you get, you out there, when you're talking to your teenager and you're trying to make eye contact, and as you're talking to them, they're like, oh yeah, Tell me this doesn't happen to you, because I'm hoping it hasn't. If your teenager is smart and witty like me, they will then throw in something while you do the same, and you allow technoference, the interference of technology in your relationships and your dialogues. If they're like me, they're going to realize this is a good time. You're going to be answering an email. Yeah, no, I'm listening. This is just an important email from work. I really have to get back to them right now. You're answering, and they're like, Mom, can I get an extra $100 for today? Yeah. Mom, I'm going to go to a party on Saturday. Because we're not paying attention. We can't focus. And because of this, and because of the technoference that happens, it interrupts us. It doesn't allow us to connect. It doesn't allow us to give the attention that they deserve. And you know what it feels like, because our teenagers do it to us often. But if you are also modeling the behavior, it's very difficult for us to say, you know what, it really bothers me when you're on your phone. Because you know what? They get to then let us know later. Well, I feel the same way when I try to talk to you about something important, but you always have a work message, a work email, something that you're working on, something that you need to get back to. And it doesn't make them feel special, unique, wanted, appreciated. So technoference is when technology interrupts us. Typically, it's our cellular devices, but it can be our tablet, a video game, a movie, a computer, but typically it's our cell phones. And then when I say it goes both ways, it definitely goes both ways. And in case you don't believe me, you all help me. If you can, in the chat, do me a favor. What did it feel like the last time you were talking to your teenager and you got upset because they had some technoference take place and they got on their cellular devices as you were trying to tell them something? How did you feel? How did you react? What did you think? Put it in the chat for me, please. I'd like to see at least 2 or 3 of you let us know. What did it feel like when technoference was flipped and it was put on you? And unfortunately, I see this very, very young too, not just with our teenagers. I see it with young parents, and they're pretending to play with their kids while they're watching a video. Like, here, color this, here, do that. And it doesn't change, because if we start that habit at a young age, it's going to continue. And you feel ignored, you feel angry, you feel unimportant. And here's the thing, it's on us. It was frustrating because I knew I'd have to explain myself again. And again, this is why I tell you it goes both ways. It's not just us, it's also them. But we need to model the behavior. I literally said this to somebody the other day. The leaders that I enjoy working with and respect more aren't the ones that tell me how to do things. They're the ones that model the behavior on a regular basis and show me how to do things. And to a certain extent, we are leaders of our households too, because we have to model that behavior. So technoference, be aware of it because it can cause problems, okay? Listening more. Now, when we talk about listening more, and I did this in the last workshop, but I felt it was more important to even share it in this one, and I call it the pen activity. The pen activity is this simple, okay? Whenever our child comes to us with a problem, sometimes we stop listening halfway through the problem because we already have the solution. And as good parents, we might even throw in a little jab. Yeah, I told you that person wasn't good for you. I told you you should have studied. You know, if you would have listened to me the first time I talked to you. And they're not even done telling us the problem. So the pen activity is as simple as this. The next time you're going to have a conversation with your teenager, give them the pen and say, you have the talking pen. And only you are allowed to talk right now. And if it takes 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, you let them talk. Because sometimes, case in point, therapy, it just helps to let it out. You know as well as I know. And if you haven't been to therapy, let me put you through a therapy session. Hi, how are you? Tell me what's going on. How did that make you feel? Thank you, time's up. That is a therapy session. And then when you leave, you feel great because you let it out. So your teenager tells you whatever it is that they have to tell you. When they're done, then they give you the talking pen. You're not allowed to give your solution, your input, your ideas, your thoughts. The first thing that you need to do is recap what you just heard to ensure it was accurate, to ensure our own biases, our own cultural lenses, our own thoughts didn't influence what we heard. Once we do that, we give them the pen back and they say yay, nay, clarify, and then you're allowed to talk. I'm going to tell you right now, the first time you do that, you're going to get anxious and you're gonna be like, well, can I get that pen real quick? I just need that pen. I really need to tell you something. Just let me get the pen. Let me get the pen. And you're not even going to listen. If you do this activity, I don't want to ruin it for you, but you may remember the shiny bald guy that's talking to you right now, because you will hear yourself talking to yourself as your teenager is talking to you, because you're anxious, because you're ready, because you want to interrupt, because you have a solution, or because you'll remember I told you you're going to be talking to yourself. And that makes it difficult for you to focus because you're talking to yourself. Okay, so let's make sure that we're listening more. Talk less. I know it's challenging sometimes, but how many of us really enjoyed being lectured by our parents? How many of us really remember a great lecture from our parents that made us rethink everything? I'm not saying it didn't happen, but that typically wasn't the best time. The times that we do remember that helped rear us, that helped educate us, that helped us grow, that helped us maybe even see things differently, when we were heard out and our parents actually spoke less and just said, like our therapists do sometimes, how did that make you feel? What would you do differently next time? How can I help you? Short, quick questions to allow our teenagers to keep talking. Because here's the thing, if we don't listen more, somebody else will. If we don't pay attention, somebody else will. So make sure that you're listening more. And sometimes it's going to mean making the time for it, which is my third point. Sometimes we don't make the time to actually interact and engage with our teenagers. And I want to give you an example that it breaks my heart to share, but it's true. Years ago, we did a 5-day camp, and I came in on the 5th day to give about a 40-minute keynote, which sometimes this happens. Students were crying, laughing, crying, laughing. They were confused with their own emotions. By the time we were done, a young lady came up to me and she said, "Hey, you ended your speech saying that you would help us out if we asked for help because you said it's important that we ask." I said, "Yeah, for sure. Like, let me know. And if I can help, I'm happy to help you out." A young lady that had met me 45 minutes earlier, they heard me talk about my mom, my life experiences, me being a bad kid, me turning into a decent kid, said the following: "Well, I'm pregnant and I was wondering if you could help me tell my parents." After I immediately said, "No. However, let's talk that out. Why did you think a complete stranger would be the better option for you?" And she said, "You seem like you would just listen more." And I'm like, "Well, if you're not my kid, I tend to listen more. If you are, it's still up for debate." But because she felt like I gave her time to listen to her after the speech, that she could share that with me. Here's the heartbreaking part. I said, "Well, why haven't you told your parents?" "Because I already know what they're going to say." How many times did you go through that as a teenager where you said, "I'm not going to ask this because I already know what my dad's going to say. I'm not going to ask this because I already know how my mom's going to react." And unfortunately, we were right a lot of the times. Not every time, but a lot of the times. And that's where you get to shock and surprise your teenager. The next time they ask or share something where they're expecting you to get upset or expecting you to immediately say no, breathe, relax, and take into consideration what they want and make the time to have a dialogue about it. For some of us, I'm guilty, I have to actually schedule things on my calendar sometimes to remind me to make the time. It came to a point where I realized, am I really making time for every single meeting and every single person that I need to talk to? But I'm not making the time to talk to my own children, my teenagers? And does it mean that it's bad that I have to schedule it? You may consider that bad, but if I'm actually doing it, then it makes a difference. It helps. So make the time, and if it needs to be scheduled, schedule it. And in some cases, it's 5 to 10 to 15 minutes. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you practice this for that first month of school, in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening before bed, put these things down and say, "Can we get 5 minutes?" And just say, "You know what? Ask a question. Find out how their day went." And it's by changing the question about how their day went. Stop asking them how school went because, well, it's a pretty simple answer. If you ask a teenager or when you were asked, "How was school?" put it in the chat because we all know the answer. It's a universal answer. Everywhere in the country, every single day, it's the same answer. All of us. That's how school went. Fine or good, fine or good. That's it. But if you schedule time to ask different questions, who got in trouble today? Who made you laugh today? What was the highlight of your day? What upset you today? What do you think about this class, this teacher, this student, this friend? Allow them to dialogue and talk about current events, talk about things that are happening, because sometimes we feel like we know what our students are going through, and especially our teenagers, but sometimes we have no idea. And making the time to have these dialogues with them can change everything. One of the big challenges that we're facing when we're trying to connect more with our teenagers, but we haven't before, and I've seen this happen in some of my workshops. I've seen a teenager tell his mom, "Are you really trying to find out what I'm all about now and what I'm doing now when you've never asked me before? You've never made the time to talk to me?" I felt horrible because I was part of that workshop and I was the one that's kind of running it. But the mom felt worse. And the mom actually answered and said, "You're right. And if it's too late to change, then I'm sorry, but I want to. I know I didn't do a great job." They started talking some more. So make the time and schedule it. Morning, afternoon, or evening, even if it's just 3 minutes. But if it's just 3 minutes of us focusing on one another, it can make a difference. Okay. Now, with the stop problem solving, Here's part of the challenge. As the good Mexican American that I am, my mom used to do everything for me when I was a little kid. But then it came to a point where she knew I was going to be on my own, and she said, "You're going to have to learn how to do these things." I'm like, okay. Because if you don't, when you go to college, your whites after that first wash turn out a little bit pink or reddish. I'm telling you, because experience happens, it just happens sometimes. But allowing us to fall on our own and get up and being able to create that space where we talk about it in the evening for 5 minutes is a better lesson than us as parents telling them, "See, this is why this continues to happen to you. See, if you'd listen to me, see, I told you not to do that." See, nobody wants to be lectured that way. Nobody wants to be told over and over and over again the same thing. And if we are saying the same things and we feel like we need to, then maybe we need to change the way we're saying them. So allow them to fall. And here's the goal. To me, personally, the goal is to raise independent critical thinkers that can function on their own. And the more we continue to try to do everything for them, the more difficult that'll be for them. So allow them to fall on their own. And instead of saying, "Get up, just dust yourself off, it'll be fine," what'd you learn from it? Why do you think you fell again? Why did you struggle? Why did you fail that test? Why did XYZ happen? Allow them to reflect and be able to express why these things happen to them. Because preparing them for life doesn't mean giving them the answers. It does mean that we can pose some questions to allow them to think about what put them in that position. So stop trying to solve all of their problems, because here's the truth, and it's very hard to say out loud. You're not going to be there to solve all their problems every time. You're not going to be at that party to tell them not to drink. You're not going to be right behind them to tell them drugs are bad. You're not going to be there to tell them when they're being peer pressured by their friends to do things that they don't necessarily want to do. So we need to teach them how to prepare, to answer and behave in the correct fashion by us allowing them to fail sometimes, but then allowing them to reflect on it. My favorite one that relates to this is when our teenagers drink. And for those of you who are like, "Our teenagers don't drink," okay, keep on telling yourself that. But for those of us that are aware, that's what they try to do when they get together, just like most of us did when we were younger. The teenager that gets drunk and actually calls his mom and dad and says, "I can't drive, and can you come pick me up?" Most teenagers won't do that because they know the consequences. They know they're going to be yelled at. They know that they're going to be lectured. They know that they're going to be grounded. They're going to be ridiculed. But the ones that do are the ones whose parents just show up like, "Hey, I'm here. Let's go." That's it. No show, no yelling. We can talk about it tomorrow. Sleep it off and let's talk about it. And it doesn't need to start in the lecture format. What I tell you, I told you not to drink, right? I told you what happened. I told you what happened. What did we learn? If they're not ready to talk about it, don't keep pushing. Allow them to be ready to talk about it, and then you do. The more we pressure them to talk, the lesser you're going to get back. So stop problem solving, help prepare them for life. Okay. Now, these last ones, the last one here, be patient. It seems so easy to just say be patient. Most of my friends that know me as a somewhat patient, calm, collected individual. And I will be the first to tell them I am pretty patient. I pride myself in. Unless you see me with my kids, my patience levels might not be as high. And one of the ways that I try to teach patience to our parents, especially as it relates to our teenagers, start treating them like we treat our nieces, our nephews, our godchildren. Somehow we're a lot more patient with them. Somehow we can listen a lot better. Somehow we're a lot more forgiving. Somehow we remain calm. Somehow it's easy to send out a reflection question like, "So why do you think you did that?" But when it's our own child, we lose our patience, and that simple, so why do you think you did that, turns into, well, why'd you do that? Like, what were you thinking? Like, I don't know what you were thinking. Like, as soon as we start talking that way, I can tell you what our teens feel and think. Off, off. I'm done. I don't need to hear this. I don't want to be yelled at. I don't want to be told why I'm this, why I'm that. So being patient is difficult, but it takes practice. It really and truly does. I don't care if you need to count to 10. I don't care if you need to walk. But one of the ways that I'd like to teach you to consider for patience is the next time you feel like you're really losing it, you're really getting upset, and it's not the time that you feel like you want to do this, I want you to go up to your child and hold their hands and say, I just need you to know that I love you. And just pause. Saying that and hopefully getting a reaction, some sort of feedback, or even just a look, especially when they're ready for you to yell at them, especially when they think now's when mom loses it, now's when dad yells at me. Now they're a little bit shocked. They're a little bit kind of off guard, like, wait, I do love you, but like, are you gonna hit me real hard right now? Like, why are you getting closer? It allows you to calm yourself. And it's proven, and even when we go to sleep with our significant others, that body heat and being next to one another and touching one another changes the chemistry in our own body too. So if we do that and just hold their hands, give them a hug if you want to, and say that I love you and stop. Because even when you're upset, it's kind of hard to say those words. I love you. We don't tend to say it that way. We're a lot more relaxed and a lot calmer. So try to be calm and hold their hands, give them a hug, and just say that I love you. It might feel uncomfortable, it might even be awkward, but that'll help. And again, I said this earlier. If you aren't patient with them, if you don't listen to them, if you don't give them the time, somebody else will. But you might not like who that somebody else is. If you're not patient with them, if you're not calm with them, if you don't listen to them, they're going to try out other people, like the guest speaker that comes to their school, like a stranger that they met 45 minutes earlier. Sometimes it's the school counselor. Sometimes it's a school teacher. And sometimes we as parents get offended and upset and right away, like, why did you tell them? Like, why couldn't you talk to me? I mean, it's simple to talk to me. And that's what we sound like. Have you heard how we react? Have you seen how you look? That's one of the reasons that they'd rather go to somebody else. So let's work on being patient, please. And before I went to this one, geez, here's the goal. Ultimately, we want to improve the trust between us. Sometimes I don't want to tell you because I don't trust how you're going to react. I don't trust what you're going to do. I don't trust what I'm going to lose. Sometimes that support, I'm going to tell you right now, my mother has supported me at times that she had no business supporting me. I was making some major mistakes, like drinking heavily as a teenager. By the time I was 15, getting drunk. And my mom still somehow remained patient and supportive. She didn't see it then. She didn't see it that next year. She probably didn't see it for the next few years. As a grown man, she taught me how to be more patient with my own children. As a grown man, I want to do everything that I can possibly do to make her proud, to make her happy, and to make her feel like the queen that she is to me. But sometimes we don't see the fruits of our labor until later. And in case you need an example of that, how many of you go to parent teacher conference and they tell you, you know what? Your daughter is so helpful. She's so calm. And what's our initial reaction, especially if we're there with our partners? Are they talking about our kid? Because I don't see this at home. I hate to bust your bubble here, but you won't see it at home. But it doesn't mean that our actions aren't being seen, that our behaviors aren't being learned, that our patience isn't being absorbed. but sometimes they just exemplify it more out there than they do at home with us. And by doing all this, we're going to build a stronger bond. By building a stronger bond, they will count on you and go to you first when there's a problem and not fourth or fifth. And ultimately, and here's your homework, I want you to send your children a text right now, especially your teen, because odds are high that they have an electronic device, a cell phone. If they don't, great. They're living a better life than most of us. This text message is going to be different than what you're used to. The question is this, and this is all you're going to ask. How can I improve as a mom, dad, guardian, caregiver, whatever it is that you are to your teen? How can I improve our communication? You might be surprised with some of the answers that you get. You might be shocked, you might be upset, but what I want you to do is to take those answers into consideration, take the pen activity, and talk about it later. Tell me more about whatever it is that you said I could do to improve our communication. Let me check for clarity. Let's talk about it. Can we continue to talk about this week for like 2-3 minutes before bedtime or on the car ride to school? I just want to learn how to be a better parent, because here's the thing. No parent really thinks they're slaying the game, and no parent shows up to any of the meetings that I've been to. You know what? I'm probably the best mom that this world has ever witnessed. Kids will say that later about their parents, but no parent feels like. You never feel like you're doing a phenomenal job. So I want you to improve the trust, improve the support, build a better bond, because ultimately I want you to improve the communication so that they trust you and they can go to you more. Hopefully these tips helped you out. If they didn't, just don't tell Shannon or Matthew or anybody from TEA so I don't get fired. If they do, please share it with everybody and tell them that I shared. And one of the ways that you can share it is here are my socials. If you can scan that QR code, it'll give you our socials, and it'll also allow you to join our Facebook Family Engagement Hub. But I want to thank you for your time, your focus, your energy, but more importantly, for your interest in trying to learn how to improve your relationship with your teenagers, because it is not an easy task. And times change. You as a teenager versus them as a teenager is a completely different world. It just is. It really is. Family dynamics, technology, school, COVID, post-COVID, all these things. But just try to practice some of these tips, and I think that they can help you out. My name is Ernesto Mejia Macias. I am your humble servant, and I hope you took something beneficial away. Thank you for your time and your energy. Have a great day, everybody.